Hello, everybody. It's Stephen and Walter here for another episode of So Chatty. It is So Chatty for January the 9th, 2026. Geez, we're almost through the first third of the month already. Just seemed like yesterday it was Epiphany. Well, it wasn't yesterday, but 2 days ago.
Almost.
3 days ago. January the 6th. Anyways, Epiphany
The
who?
12th day of Christmas.
Ooh, and what did you get me?
Nothing.
Oh, fine. Well, that goes with the other 11 days. Yeah, nothing. So, what have we been working on? Well, I'm very happy to say that after my setback with my bag making, which I still have not completely given up on yet, I decided to turn my attention to some other projects. One of those is I have 4 quilts and 1 table runner that have been sitting in a pile forever to be quilted on Lucy, and I got the inspiration this week to do it, and today I did 2 quilts. They're small ones, but 2 quilts on Lucy, and I got the other 3 projects done yesterday. So, or yes, was it yes? Yeah, yesterday. I'm still not caught up on the days of the week anymore. Maybe that's an old man thing. I don't know. Anyways, no comment from you. I can see it behind your eyes what you're thinking. Of course, you've been walking around going, my hip, my hip. I offered to replace his hip for him. I have a glue gun. I have an electric knife. It could be done.
Well, it started off my back was bothering me because I was shoveling a bunch of snow.
Well,
I probably
yeah.
wasn't doing it properly.
No.
And then it sort of moved to my hip.
Yeah, but you know, when Walter Snow, like, he lives for this moment. I don't know. Flake falls. He's got the door open. Oh my God. Oh my God. I've got to clean it up. I got to clean up. Oh my God. Got to check the storm sewer.
Well, like, it's not like you're running out there doing it.
Because I know that God put it there. God will take it away. Spring will come. It will melt. It always does. It always does. I'm not worried about it. Why should I run out there? You beat me anyways.
Not that you have to drive through it
Well, I don't.
or walk through it.
Well, that part is hard. Went for my walk today, and holy crap, almost drowned.
Well, yeah, and yesterday you flipped.
Yes, I hit the black ice ironically, at the end of our driveway, which is, considering that Walter salts it like,
Well, but if it's really thawing out bad, then the salt disappears.
Yeah, well, whatever. It disappeared, and so did I. I went right down on my rear end, but I'm fine. I didn't hurt anything, didn't break anything. I'm fine. But then I decided...
Well, there's lots of padding there, so...
Well, I might have a big ass, but at least I'm not an asshole. Yeah, okay. So, enough for the domestic. Yeah, like I said, I didn't hurt myself, but then I decided, there's other icy patches. Are we tempting fate here? You know, it's all fun and games until somebody breaks a hip. So, no. But I did go out today, and it's very mild here today. We're having a spring thaw, as they call it, January thaw. It's 7 degrees C right now, which is balmy. That's shorts weather.
It's very warm.
And everything is melting, and it's all pooling on the road, on the sidewalk, especially on the sidewalk parts that people didn't bother to shovel off.
Well, no, what happens on the sidewalks is there's an edge of snow all the way up down the side, right? And it contains the water. It doesn't have anywhere to go.
Oh, well, thank you for explaining the physics of snowbanks to me. Oh, I would never have guessed. In all these years I've lived in this country, you know, almost 70 years, and I have never... Oh, didn't know that. Thank you so much. That was very good. That might be for those of you who have never seen snow. Maybe. Anyways, yeah, so today it was like walking on water. In fact, it was funny. There was a guy ahead of me at one point, and he was walking his dog. Well, the dog was smart. It sees the water coming on the sidewalk. It pulls right over to the side and tries to get up on a snowbank and walk by. He's on the other side walking on a snowbank. The two of them are kind of sliding towards the middle. I decided this is a disaster going to happen. I'm going to go onto the road part and walk up it instead, and that's what I did. But it was so nice out. It was nice and balmy. Well, it wasn't nice out when I went. Now it's really sunny because this morning it was raining.
So let's hurry up and do this so I can go out for a walk.
You're not the boss of me. Anyways, I just thought people might want to know everybody asks about the weather every time. Anytime we're on anything, everybody talks about the weather. So we're talking about the weather. So right now it's sunny, it's warm, it just went up a degree. It's up to 8 now. How do you like that? Just bang like that. They're saying
it's supposed to go to 9.
I know they said it could be a new record for this day this year here. But anyways, but it's not going to last. It will get cold, very cold,
Yeah, it's
very
supposed to
simple.
get really cold.
And then we'll get huge dumps of snow and we'll be buried again. So yeah,
Yeah, right now a lot of our snow is melted.
yeah,
So
but it'll come back. It's only January. That's not over until it's July. Okay, so as I was saying, I got all of my UFOs are quilted. Now I need to bind them all, and that's my project next for that. And then they're out of my hair and they're not staring at me. And in the meantime, I can get back to my quilt of valor that I'm designing. And here you see part of it. Tricky way about doing this, and I'll explain more about this on the Idiot Quilter next week on Tuesday, but let's just say quilt math hard and trying to make sure that all the blocks are the same size and that they fit around the panel, that I don't cut too much off the panel. And so far, I'm very proud of myself. I have managed to do that. I've got a bottom row to put on that, but that's not the end of the quilt. This is just the inner part of the quilt. There's more coming on this, so stay tuned. I'm making it up as I go. And if it works out okay, I'm going to write it up as a pattern, and then I'm going to make a second one. But the second one I'm going to make, I'm going to use a pattern. It won't be a quilt of valor. I'm going to make it out of totally different fabrics and use a totally different panel for it, just to see if my calculations and everything are right. And if that one all works out, I'm going to put it up on my Google Drive for everybody as a free pattern that you can have. But I'm also thinking that if this turns out okay, this of course is going to be a quilt of valor. I'll donate it to Quilts of Valor, but I may donate the pattern to them as well, that they can sell the pattern in their store. Now, if that works out that way, then maybe I shouldn't offer it as a freebie on my site. Maybe I should make it a link to the Quilt of Valor site where people could purchase it if they wanted it. Maybe. We'll have to see how that all works out. Okay, so that, and yeah, that's what I've been up to. So, what have you been up to? Got something to show us?
I haven't been working too diligently on it, but
Because
I'm
he's
still
been busy
working.
shoveling snow.
I've been doing this shirt. I had a problem with the collar. I had to rip it off. And now I've put it back on again. So I've got the collar done. I just have to hem the shirt, put the buttons on, and
hold it into the camera so people can see.
Hem the shirt and hem the sleeves and put the buttons on and maybe put a pocket on it. I haven't put a pocket on it.
One of those Wally's famous invisible pockets on there. And that is his shirt. He's not making it for me. He's making it for himself. The greedy bugger.
Well, I've made more shirts for you than I made for me.
I know. I was being sarcastic, but obviously you have no sense of humor. Okay, so, and I bought, Walter got something new this week that I bought for him because his birthday's coming up in a couple of weeks, but not this weekend coming, but the following weekend we're going to be off on a sew day. So I want to have this for him so he could trundle it off to the sew day. And I got him a bag for his serger with wheels. I got him a Tuto bag. You know, they're the mother of all bags kind of a thing. And I didn't know if it was going to, it actually came one day early, which I was surprised at. So do you like your bag?
Yes, it's nice.
Yes, of course it's nice. I could have got you the cheap one.
The cheap one.
Oh yeah, there were ones on there for under $100.
Oh, okay.
This one was not under $100.
No, I know that.
Or under $200, or under $300. But it's a good bag because all of our bags are Tuto bags. Tuto.
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 T-U-T-T-O.
Tuto.
Like Toto.
Maybe it's tutu. I don't know. Whatever, but they're good bags. So he's got that now. Okay, so we have started again back with Sewing with Stephen on Wednesdays. We had our first one for the new year this past Wednesday, and they will continue as usual. And start time is always 9 a.m. Eastern. We go till 4 p.m. Come and go as you please. You don't have to be there right at 9 or whatever. Come get caught up on your projects. We always learn a lot of things too, and not necessarily about quilting when we're on there. It's amazing the stuff we share, the information we have there. There were a couple of things that we learned out of our common knowledge on there, and I can't remember what they are now. I could remember how to keep a memory in my head, but it's always kind of interesting. So we're just not a stodgy old bunch of old people sewing, you know. We have a good time. We talk about, you name it, anything. And I mean it. And if you're someone who's a bit of a prude, you might not like our group because we're not prudes at all. Not that we get into anything too graphic or anything like that, but sometimes the conversation lends itself to, certain issues that maybe you're not supposed to talk about in polite company. But I never said that we were polite company. Okay, so main topic for today. Well, this was another one that came from a subscriber, Marjorie Harmson. And at first, when she sent me this idea, I kind of went, I don't know. She even sent a picture to go along with the idea. I'll show you what she sent me. This is the picture she sent me. It's a quilt and a book that she gave as a gift. And she wrote this about it. She says, a few years back, I made a little quilted blanket for a girlfriend who was retiring and included a copy of the Thursday Murder Club and a sewn corner bookmark. As a new quilter, this was a challenge to me, but fun too. I have since seen lots of creative ideas, especially for kids, where people have made quilts that coordinate with books. Maybe some of your followers might enjoy trying something similar. If nothing else, a book cover can be a great jumping off point for choosing your colors and or prints. Food for thought. Marjorie. Well, I thought about it for a moment and I thought, I don't think that's really... And then I thought, no, wait. I mean, after all, literature, getting people to read, what was one of my missions in my life as an English teacher. So I decided, with the help of AI, to look into this further. Well, I found a lot of very interesting things. And the thing about this is, as Marjorie has suggested here, is gifts. Gifts for kids, but gifts for adults as well. There's a whole lot of things you can do with this combination of literature and quilts, as I have found out. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And what I did was, I just want to find my notes and put them up here on the screen for us all to see. So I went into AI and I put in linking kids' books with quilts and sewing off, or I said, can you make a link? How did I word it? I just said something about linking up kids' books with quilting or something like that in there. And this is what it came up with. But it also went beyond just kids. I also had it also go in and find a link between adults, like adult books and quilting as well. So it came back with this as its introduction. Linking kids' books with quilts and sewing offers engaging, educational, and creative opportunities. Ideas range from creating projects inspired by book themes to using actual fabric and storytelling activities. And then it gave us a whole list of things. And we're going to go through these. They might generate some ideas for you. They've generated some ideas for me, especially when you're trying to think about unique gifts to give to people, whether they're kids or adults. So they talk about, of course, one thing that would come up first would be inspired sewing projects. They talk about character plushies or dolls, read a book featuring a beloved character like whoever Corduroy is, and then help children sew a simple felt or fabric version of the character. Okay, well, that's not quilting, but it is sewing. And, a lot of people are into making these plushies and dolls and things like that. Adam Sews makes plushies. He has a bunch of them. But you've got a company like East Quilting Co who base their quilt designs on literature already. Like they've done Alice in Wonderland, they're doing Peter Pan, they've done Anne of Green Gables, that kind of stuff.
He has a bear quilt.
He has a bear quilt, yeah, things like that. So really, he's already taken this idea of linking quilting up with fiction. And it's obviously very popular because he has a lot of people making his quilts and his patterns. And if you've never checked out John's stuff, he's in the East Coast. He is Canadian, lives on Cape Breton. And
it's the Art East Quilt Company,
yeah,
right?
The Art East Quilt Company. Just look that up in Google. You'll find him and check out his patterns. One thing about the patterns, and John's very aware of this because he uses it as his slogan: cut, 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 cut. So, because there is a lot of cutting. But at first, when you look at his quilts, you're going to think, oh, these are paper pieced. They're not. They're all patchwork. The way he's worked out the designs, and his patterns are very easy to follow. They're very detailed. Some of his patterns are books, are literally in book format for it. So check it out. He has kits, usually for most of them.
Yeah, I could see them being good gifts for children associated with a book.
Yeah, give the kid the book as well. Or, maybe the kid has read the book, or they've done it, make like Alice in Wonderland, or he's got one that's Winnie the Pooh as well. So he deals with the classics. And I know a lot of people like them because they like to give these to their grandchildren. And so, couple it with the book, because maybe they're not at an age yet where they could read something like Alice in Wonderland or Winnie the Pooh or something. But as they get older, then they've got the quilt, they've got the book, and the two can go together. And I think that's a really strong link at a very early age in a child's life, because I know as a fact, as an English teacher or as a teacher in general, kids who started reading at an early age or were read to at an early age tend to do better in school because they have a better grasp of language. And you need language for everything else that you study, whether it's mathematics or science, geography, history, all those things. You got to be able to read, and read for understanding. And it also gives the kids a love of it too at an early age. Kids who don't like to read do not do well. It's been a scientifically proven fact that kids who do not like to read do not do as well in school as kids who do. And that's a learned behavior.
However, I did well in school, but I was not much of a reader. But
Well, what do you mean by you weren't much of a reader? Like, there's different forms of reading.
Yeah, well, I didn't read stories like Alice in Wonderland.
But did you read other things?
Yeah, I read a lot of magazines and articles and things like that.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
I'm the kind of guy that more likely reads a technical book.
Well, we need people like that. But no, it was, we always found when I was teacher and when I went to workshops about this and everything, they always said when we were trying to look for ways to get kids turned on to reading, we realized that not all kids are necessarily turned on by reading a novel, but some of them, there's nothing wrong with when they used to read magazines. There's nothing wrong with magazines. There's nothing wrong with technical manuals, instructions, or stuff like that, as long as they read, because as they read, they develop vocabulary and understanding. So it doesn't matter what they're reading, as long as they're reading. Now, of course, I'm not sure, there might be some types of literature that aren't appropriate at certain age levels, but well, they just look at the pictures anyways. But, and now, is that being killed off? Well, I saw a thing on a news report the other day about screen time with kids and how they're finding that kids who have a lot of screen time are not doing as well in school.
Yeah, so I think what it is they're looking at a lot of video or things like that.
Yeah.
They're not actually, I still have a lot of screen time, but I do actually read a lot of articles and stuff like that.
But you see, here's the problem with screen time, okay? If they're playing video games, if they're watching YouTube videos or other types of videos all the time, they're really not reading. And that's a part of your brain that is not getting activated for that. The visual is a different part of your brain. There is much to be said about visual literacy, but I don't think these kids are getting visual literacy here either, with, thumbs down and going away at it. But they can read on a screen. They, read articles. There's novels are on computers or e-readers or that kind of stuff. It's just the modern way of doing it, but it's still reading.
Yeah.
And sometimes this is when they get older too. It's being able to take what they have read and to think about it in a critical manner And boy, that's a skill that's definitely needed now because of the scams that are out there and everything. So if we can bring kids at an early age into the idea that books are fun or reading is fun, we can do that with a character quilt or something like that. I think that's a good thing uh,
Hmm.
with it. So it makes it like
I
they,
could see that being really good for, especially a young kid,
yeah,
is getting a quilt like a fantasy quilt, and then have the fantasy book with it or
yeah.
whatever.
Or just think now, a community project for a kindergarten or grade one class. Have your local guild make a whole bunch of character quilts or even character blocks or something, or small little lap quilts with some of the characters on it from a book that they might be, or books that
They may be interested in.
yeah. And the kids, they always have story time in kindergarten class, and the teacher oftentimes has a comfy chair or a rocking chair, and the kids all sit on a carpet in front of it, and the teacher's got the book up, the picture book, and is reading and telling them things. Well, think of all those kids sitting there with a quilt on their lap or around them, being cozy, or like they suggested, a plush animal or something like that. Something that they could have, that they might be able to take with them after the school year is over, and they can put in their little cubbies where they keep things. I'll bet you that would get kids right into story time a lot as well. And maybe even they would like to pursue, maybe there's books in a series, like Anna Green Gables, there's a whole bunch of those. Wizard of Oz, there's more than just the Wizard of Oz in the series and things like that. It might encourage these kids as they get a little older to read more of this kind of thing and, vary out. I don't know. But I think that would be a good thing. So there's a lot here. It's not just give them a doll. You're giving them an experience. Um, so they talk storybook quiet books. Create a soft fabric activity book with pages dedicated to different scenes or elements from a story, incorporating interactive elements like buttons, zippers, or flaps to promote fine motor skills. Okay, so everybody's familiar with the concept of a cloth book. They've been around forever, cloth book. But what if you were to do, like, for example, I'll go back to John's Art East because he's the only one I know that's really doing this kind of thing. Many of the characters that are on his quilts can stand alone. Like they're a block, and you put them together, or a couple of blocks, and it makes that character. Well, you could take those blocks, make them into a book, a cloth book. And the teacher could be reading, or the parent could be reading from the actual book to the kids while they've got their little cloth book. And you don't necessarily have to have anything written in the cloth book, but you've got the characters there. So, Eeyore was in the forest one day with Piglet, and this adventure was happening. And then you stop and you say to the kid, can you find the picture of Piglet in your book? And if they point at you, they're a rude little child and they need to be sent to the corner. But, you know, it ties it together and gets them more interested in character development, in adventure stories, things like that. I want to be a kindergarten teacher now. I see a lot of fun with this, except I'd have to kill them all. I hate little children. But that's a story for another day. Okay, they talk about character or scene quilts. After reading a book, have kids draw their favorite scene or character. These drawings can be turned into embroidery projects or used as inspiration for specific quilt books. Well, I can see you taking that one step further. Yeah, everybody knows that you can transfer a picture and print it on your printer on special fabric, and it can be incorporated into a quilt. So why not take their artwork that has come from a book and make it into a quilt and give that to them as well? So there's another link. I could see older kids turning this into things. I could see high school kids as a independent study project for a book and have them create a cloth book for a child, based on that book that they've read, key scenes from it. If it's a sewing class, if it's family and consumer arts or whatever they call it these days, in there, those ones are already doing sewing because they would be a little bit more elaborate to do that. And you don't have to have sewing machines for the kids to do this. They can cut and paste from felt or from other fabrics or things like that, or from, patterns that they make or something like that. There's a lot of potential here for art as well. Let's see, recreate quilt blocks. Well, that's what we're talking. Use books that feature specific quilt designs, such as my grandmother's patchwork quilt and Mrs. Noah's patchwork quilt. I'm not familiar with either one of those,
No.
but an inspiration for making actual quilt squares using fabric scraps. Well, I do know there are books out there, though. I think that first one, my grandmother's patchwork quilt, might have something to do with Ricky Timms from the Quilt Show. I'm not sure. I know he wrote a book, and the girl in, or it might have been a different title, but the little girl, the main character in the book, learns how to quilt with her grandmother, and she makes her own quilt. And the book takes you through sort of the steps to make the actual quilt. Apparently that book that came in the Missouri Star Quilt box this year, that was written by one of Jenny Doan's daughters, in there are clues for making different blocks, and at the end of the book or something, you have the whole pattern to make a quilt. And I know there's other writers out there that have done something similar to this idea too. So, that might be a way to get a child into quilting and reading. And we need younger people in quilting because it's becoming a dying art. Because all of us are old that are doing it. And if we don't have another generation in there, we talked about this on another So Chatty back a few weeks ago, get the younger people involved in this.
And if it's more creative sewing,
yeah,
it might inspire more kids into it.
And it might have spin-offs from there. I mean, maybe they won't want to become quilters, but they've learned a basic skill on how to do some sewing on a machine. They might want to get into garment sewing or some other forms of sewing.
Yeah,
like I
could see it leaning towards some garment sewing as well, and making unique clothing.
Yeah,
that isn't the everyday drab crap on the shelf.
No, and I think one of the other side factors to all of this is stimulation of a creative imagination, because these kids that have all the screen time are not being creatively stimulated. The story's already being told to them on these video games. There is no real imagination in that. Unless they create their own characters. And maybe in some games they do. I don't know. Like I know in something like a game like Dungeons and Dragons, which isn't a video game, that's storytelling and stuff like that, but not all kids are into that, because Dungeons and Dragons is for nerds apparently, and I can see why that might be. But when we were kids, we amused ourselves. We didn't have little pads and video games and things like that.
You had to be inventive.
Yeah, we were kicked outside in the summer. You ate breakfast, you were kicked outside and say, don't you come home till the street lights come on, or come home for lunch and then go back out again. We were left to our own devices. Our parents were not there catering to us every moment of the day. My father was at work all day. My mother was in the house cleaning constantly.
Watching her stories.
Yeah, I'm watching her stories. Well, actually, my mother never really watched stories much in those days.
Well, I'm just thinking of one of the neighbors' kids.
Yeah. But we were kicked out. She didn't want us in the house under her feet with it. And if you came up and you said, and we've all been there with this one, I'm bored, go out and play with a rock. Well, go amuse yourself. My mother didn't cater to us for that. She didn't sit down, let's play a game like they do today. Now, I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. I know today's modern parenting would say that's a bad thing. I don't
know. I think it becomes what they call creative play.
Yeah.
Right?
And we found lots of things to keep us amused. I mean, mud is always fun with that. Sticks are fun too. Dressing up with leaves all over you because you're hiding or something. Or what we used to do is we had an old wooden fence, so we used to put on puppet shows for the neighborhood kids over the top of it. Yeah. And then my mother got upset with us because we have all these kids in the neighborhood sitting in our front lawn, and we're a bunch of rest of us are in behind, sort of like Spanky and our gang, with their puppets over the top doing these things. Made up the scripts for original, I can tell you. Probably weren't that great, but kept them amused. And my mother'd be yelling out the window, "What are you kids doing out there making all that damn noise? Now stop it! Your little baby sister's trying to sleep. She's down for a nap." So we learned how to do sign language with puppets and stuff. But anyways, but we amused ourselves. And, and then as you got older, you started to amuse yourself by experimenting with things, which sometimes would get me into trouble.
Well, I mean, with the screen time nowadays, too, I mean, we're complaining about the kids doing the screen time, but it all started when TV became popular, because I remember working in my early days of working, and having to go in a summer job I had to go into different houses and stuff like that. And I'm basically in a lot of these houses, they had their kids sitting in front of the TV watching cartoons all day.
Yeah. And cartoons do not inspire imagination. The story's already there. But now they say in here, on this next one, they talk about felt storyboards. So a large felt mat creates small felt cutouts of characters and objects that kids can move around as they retell the story, enhancing comprehension and imaginative play. Well, they've used felt boards forever in school systems. I don't know if they still use actual felt boards, but the principle's still there. They just probably use modern technology for this kind of thing. But you see, it stimulates storytelling. It stimulates imagination. And you couple that with maybe making a small little quilt. It doesn't have to be a complicated thing or something like that. The kids get to play with color, with textures, a whole bit, and they get to tell their own story. They get to make it up, and that stimulates imagination. I mean, if we did not have imagination in our world, we wouldn't have most of the technology we have today. And whether you think technology is good or bad, it doesn't matter. The fact is, the way that a society progresses is through the imagination of its population. And that's, people ask the question, what if? And then they try to answer it. And that's using imagination. Read under a cozy quilt. Make story time a special cozy ritual by reading under a quilt, especially one the child helped make or that features relevant characters, which we've already talked about. Seek and find games. If a quilt has a busy pattern with animals or objects, turn it into an interactive seek and find game during or after reading a book, linking the visual elements of the quilt to the story's themes. Well, you can buy lots of novelty quilt fabric that has characters or animals on it and stuff like that. That would be easy enough to make. And couple it with a book. You may not be able to find fabric that is exactly like has every page of the book somewhere embedded in it. But again, use your imagination with it. Like, does this find the animal in here that looks like Bucky the Beaver in the story we just read, and that leads into discussion with kids about animals and nature and stuff like that. And, you can do lots of things with that. Now they talk about more specifically like educational skill building ideas. Say quilting as a story. Emphasize that quilts often tell stories through their history and design. Discuss the story of a specific quilt pattern or the idea of a memory quilt that tells the story of a family or event. Okay, this might be for a little older children, but, letting them know that quilting just didn't happen. There's a history to it. This could get into the whole discussion with older kids about the Underground Railroad, even if that is a myth. But you can talk about that as being a myth. You could talk about memory quilts. Why do people have memory quilts? What if you were to make a memory quilt? What would you use? What would you have in your memory quilt? Things like that. It gets them interested in history. So, and if you're going to be interested in history, what's the primary form of history? Books. And why do some kids like history and some kids do not like history? Because in history, there's a lot of reading. And if they don't like to read, then they don't probably like history. Did you like history?
I like general history. I don't like, when I was in school in grade 9, I didn't really care for all. I was blasted with all kinds of like dry dates and things like that, where that turned me off of history. But I mean, if I look at the more generalized history of areas that I hear about now, I'm more interested, like without necessarily having to memorize dates and things like
Yeah.
that. So,
But this is where I think sewing and quilting and textile design would come in very easily. I mean, you could do a whole social history about a certain time period, like what was Victorian England all about. There's lots of examples of Victorians
well,
sewing.
what about like past history fantasy books like 30,000 Leagues Under the
Yeah,
Sea and all other stuff?
yeah. And you could have them design, like, okay, moving away from doing things like characters or that, what about doing something that would involve design and color choices? Okay, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. The the um the Nautilus, the submarine in that. Anytime you see any illustrations of the Nautilus, since it was a fantasy when it was written, the submarines did not exist. Uh, People did all kinds of weird things with the design, like made them look like mansions inside when they were under an underwater mansion. But they'd have draperies, they'd have furniture and that. Um, what would be an appropriate thing to put on the wall of the Nautilus that would, the whole idea of a sea theme or something like that? I mean, again, it's imagination, letting kids explore all these things, but let them explore it in the medium of fabric and thread
Mm-hmm.
and that. And again, they don't have to know how to sew to do these kind of things. Some might, depending on the age
I
level.
mean, some boys and stuff might be interested in, I'm getting like, or boys or girls, in space things and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And
So they could design, things that revolve around space travel or alien life or something like that. And you could do it all through quilting skills or sewing skills. Think about sewing skill books. Use dedicated sewing books for kids, which include basic techniques, projects in conjunction with storybooks to teach a valuable lifelong lesson. Now, I have never seen a book like this, but I've never been specifically looking for one. But apparently, there are such books that teach sewing and at the same time tell a story as well. Well, I suppose like those ones I was talking about that like Ricky Timms did, where the little girl, the main character, is making a quilt
mm,
in the book, but
mm,
there's instructions within the
mm,
story that kids could follow. Now, what would be really interesting is giving that book to maybe an older kid and saying, okay, read the book, but as you're reading the book, it's going to give you instructions on how to make this quilt or this
mm,
block or something. Let's see what you come up with. I think that would be kind of
mm.
cool. And they would develop their sewing skills. All kids should be taught how to do some basic sewing.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
so. I think even if they don't do any like more creative sewing like we do, um, uh,
sewing a button on,
sewing a button
hemming a pair
on,
of
having a
pants.
pair of pants. Even a lot of parents can't do that.
Yeah. Um,
I mean, they go out and you've got family members that go out and have to have their pants hemmed. They don't know how to do it
yeah,
themselves.
you can save money. Not but doing it yourself, and it's not that hard to learn. But it'd be a good skill for a kid to learn. So start them early on that kind of thing. They talk about fabric bookmarks, a simple and practical approach to sewing a bookmark from scrap fabric, which can then be used to mark their place in their favorite storybook. Yeah, and you can make that at all multiple different levels.
Yeah.
Actually, bookmarks in general, making them, no matter what technique you use, is always great with kids because it's an art. Like it's can be part of the art program. It can be part of the literature program. Um, it can be part of learning how to design or something like that, or even to tell a story. All of those are great techniques. Just instead of doing it on paper, do it in fabric. And there's lots of fabrics that have. I'm thinking of Tula Pink
Yeah.
fabric. She has characters and everything. I mean, they could take a piece of Tula Pink, fussy cut it, and make it into a bookmark kind of thing. You could teach them basic quilting on that. I mean, take a piece of the fabric, piece of backing, a little piece of batting, put it all together, and let them thread paint. You could call it thread painting on a sewing machine or by hand all over it. They're quilting, but it's in a small form. That might be a real kick. Or embroidery on it too, if you want to get a little bit more elaborate. Okay, so lots of things you can do with kids. You just have to have some imagination. But what about adults? So they said here, linking adult books with quilts and sewing allows for meaningful, personal, and social projects that can deepen engagement with literature and craft. Ideas range from intricate designs based on historical fiction to community-based book and quilt clubs. So they talk here about themed quilting and sewing projects, literary symbolism quilts, design quilt blocks that represent key symbols, themes, or motifs from adult novels. And they have a couple here as an example, like The Great Gatsby, The Old Man in the Sea. Ugh. I could pick other ones right over those two. Well, The Great Gatsby's not so
50
bad.
Shades of Grey?
Well, there you go. You can have a lot of fun with that one. Okay. Old Man in the Sea is just, I hated The Old Man in the Sea. I even had to teach it once. Oh, horrible book. But anyway, I'm not a Hemingway fan. Anyways, but I'm thinking here, book clubs. Lots of people older people belong to book clubs. What about a book club / quilting bee or quilting group? So you meet once a month or something. Half of the meeting is, well, you could read the book by a certain date. Everybody had to have this book read. And then you decide on how you're going to make a quilt as a group. Everybody makes one block from something from the book. And you can get very philosophical with something like this, because you could turn around and say, okay, create a quilt block that represents how you felt about the book, or how you saw the main character, or one of the issues that may have come up, or themes in the book. You could get as elaborate as you want, depending on how literary your particular group was. But I think that would add a really interesting dimension to a book club. And sometimes people enjoy book clubs being around other people, listening to what they have to say about the book, but they themselves are a little shy. They're afraid if they say something, people will think that they're basically stupid because they came up with something that, they're not easily able to share their idea. But if they could share their idea in a different format, like a quilt block or something like that, that might be more comfortable for them. And these quilt blocks, when they're all done, you put them into one big quilt. These could be a real conversation piece, or they could inspire more deeper analysis of what they've already read. Because oftentimes, in order to understand the true meaning or the themes in a book, you need to talk about it, and you need to talk about it on different levels and think about it. And you need time to think about it. There's no right answer into what a book means.
It depends on what you're reading. So,
well, yeah, but I mean, if you could take any book,
and you were reading all the Penny series and
the Louise Penny series, Canadian writer, murder mystery type books, crime, that one. Holy crap, that one is full of stuff that could become a quilt. Ooh, what an idea! Maybe I should try this someday. Make a literary quilt. They talk about historical era garments. Read historical fiction novels such as those by Jane Austen and use historical sewing patterns to create era-appropriate garments like Regency-style dresses, waistcoats, or corsets. But you could also develop that into quilt blocks. Looking for, like, for example, I'm thinking Civil War reproduction fabric. There seems to be a lot of interest in the Civil War, at least in the States. Not so much maybe here in Canada, but Civil War fabrics, people love them. But a lot of people say, but what am I going to do with them? Well, why not do something that has to do with something out of that time period? Or just watch Gone with the Wind and do a quilt from that. Same time period, but you're using fabric, even if it is reproduction, from that time period and developing things from that. Fabric storybooks, art quilts. Okay, for those of you that are art quilters, this is definitely, you've already thought of all these things, I'm sure. Create detailed art quilts or fabric books where each page panel visually interprets a chapter or key scene from a complex novel, offering a unique personal narrative of the reading experience. So this is where you could get into more abstract creations. Um, you know, we know colors represent moods in many ways or personality types. Putting together an art quilt to get across maybe the theme that you felt was in the particular piece of literature, or in your quilt guild, they could have a section of the guild that do this kind of thing. People who have, like doing art quilts, but maybe have them framework it around a piece of literature in the group too. So they'd all be different, but it would definitely generate conversation. I think it would also generate a certain amount of competition too, in there too. Bookcase quilts. So a quilt using a bookshelf pattern, filling the fabric spines with the names or colors of favorite adult books to create a personal literary tribute. Okay, I have a bookcase quilt on the wall behind me. You can't see it right now, but it's in there. That one was done on the embroidery machine, but bookcase quilts are very, very popular. I know of lots of people that have made them, whether they've done them as an in the hoop embroidery project or whether they do them like block piecing. There's lots of patterns for them. But you can change the title on the spine to represent your library, what you've read, or what your theme is, or something like that. They don't even have to be a full-size quilt. And you could do this with a guild. You could do this with a bunch of sewing friends. You could make a community quilt. Maybe something you could donate to the local library. If you've got a group of friends who love to take books out from the library and read all the time, they each develop one block for the quilt with that looks like the cover page of a book, which they could make up themselves from. It doesn't have to be the actual cover page for the actual book. And the title on it, put it all together as a quilt, present it to your local library on display or for a fundraiser or something. I think that would be giving back to your community and at the same time challenging your creativity. Book cover recreations. Well, that's what I was just saying. Use a variety of fabric types and embroidery to design quilt blocks that mimic the texture and visual style of favorite adult book covers. 50 Shades of Grey. You just go into the quilt store and say, okay, I need some gray. I need 50 shades of this. And they'll go, what are you doing? And I'm going, never mind. It could be fun, like I'm sure most of you poop on that idea I just gave, but if you really think about it.
Or we were just making a joke about that particular book, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying it could be another book that has to have colors in it that they thing or you like on your example of the original example, they had made a quilt with that uses colors on the cover of the book.
Yeah.
And
really, take it one step further because book cover art is a thing. And you find, maybe you find a book cover on a book or something that the colors really, the style of it speaks to you. Try to maybe not necessarily reproduce it, but use those colors in a creative way to create a quilt for quilt ideas. People are always looking for quilt ideas. Mm-hmm. So that could be generated from look around your house at the books you have. Or if you have any magazines left over from the old days, look at those covers because do people read magazines anymore? I don't know. They go on here with collaborative and social ideas, which we've been kind of touching on in here too. Books and Blocks Club. Form a book club where members read the same novel, then each person creates one or more quilt blocks inspired by the story. Well, that's what we've already talked about. The finished blocks can be assembled into a collaborative quilt or a collection of individual creations. So we've already kind of talked about that. Memory and tribute quilts. Link the idea of quilts as storytelling devices to adult themes of memory, legacy, and community. Read novels that deal with these concepts and then create a memory quilt using fabrics that hold personal significance, much like the books that shape our lives. So I'm thinking nursing home
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. Oftentimes, people in nursing homes who may be suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's, they will remember a favorite piece of literature. So maybe you could talk to them about what that book is, if it's a relative or a friend in there, and go off and make a quilt based on that and give it to them. And that might stimulate memories for them, which would be very therapeutic. I think, with something like Alzheimer's, which is a little bit of a spin away from the more traditional memory quilts that are usually made from somebody who's passed on their clothing or from t-shirts that have been collected from different concerts or things like that. This is taking that idea but bending it slightly. Author-inspired events. Host a sewing circle or a quilt-along inspired by a life or works of a specific author. Jane Austen's novels, for instance, have inspired dedicated books for creating related craft projects and exploring Regency-era domestic life. So, yeah, taking, like there was a mention earlier about historical books and things like that. Well, taking a specific author and translating that writer's style into a quilt. Now, that is more advanced, I would think, because it would mean that you would have had to have studied, so to speak, the book. Like Jane Austen, they're using Jane Austen because the Regency era, and it lends itself the way it's written and the style and everything. In fact, I hated Jane Austen. I managed to escape having to study her in university, whereas everybody else got. But I somehow managed to pick courses that didn't involve Jane Austen because I thought she would be dead boring. And then a few years ago, I picked up one of her books. Just loved it. I've read several Jane Austens. I now I understand. It took me 50 years to figure that out. But now I understand the appeal of Jane Austen's novels, and I can see the appeal to the style because it's the Regency era, and it's the era of the tall-waisted dresses that are very like slimmer fitting kind of things down in that kind of deal. They have a very elegance to them, the big gloves up the arm and all that kind of stuff. Well, take some of that style and put it into a quilt block or a quilt. Bit of a challenge, but hey, if you love Jane Austen or somebody else, I could do Thomas Hardy, but it would all be black and have crossbones on it because all of his books are very dark. And if you don't know who Thomas Hardy is, well, I can't really explain him. But just say Tess of the D'Urbervilles and Jude the Obscure. If you know either one of those books, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't know those books, never mind. Practical and everyday items. Quilted book covers. Sew a stylish, durable quilted book cover complete with an inside pocket for notes or a pen, which can be used to protect a favorite paperback or journal. And basically, that's the project that Marjorie started out with as a gift. In the Missouri Star quilt box this year, there was a project to make a composition book cover, which I've since found out that the composition book they included is not the right size for the cover you're supposed to make, which doesn't surprise me in the least bit. But yeah, and if you want to go back to kids, have kids make a book cover for one of their school books or for a composition text, a composition book or something. You pick those up at the dollar store.
Or for their iPad.
Oh, for their iPad or for their ebook. Yeah, well, it's probably more or less their iPad or their phone. Well, yeah, you could do a quilted iPhone case. Yeah, that might be fun. But that's not really reading. Now we're talking about technology, which may be a topic in itself for some time down the road.
Yeah, but if they're using e-readers instead of books, then that might be practical.
Well, yeah, if they are.
I don't know if they are.
I don't think they are.
I think a lot of the kids are using tablets too, so
yeah,
they use them as reading.
Well, I know a few years ago they switched over to using what they call them, Google Books or something.
Oh, okay.
Google
Chromebooks.
Chromebooks, yeah, and that kind of stuff. So, but they could make a little patch quilted patch, stick on it or something. I don't know.
Who knows? I don't know what the kids are doing these
I don't
days.
know either. I'm so far out of it anymore in that I have no idea how these kids are doing stuff. But I do know that one thing is I'm very thankful that at a very early age, my parents, mostly my mother, turned me on to books. And I've never looked back. I mean, I spent my whole career dealing with literature, and I still read to this day. I don't read like I used to read. Mainly I read just before I go to sleep at night, so I get one chapter in a night. So it takes me a year to finish a book now. Whereas before, I could read 3 books in a week. Well, in university I had to, or more. But the thing is, I still love reading. And I can still see, and reading stimulates the imagination, and quilting stimulates the imagination, and sewing stimulates the imagination. They're all forms of art. So they all work together hand in hand, and we shouldn't exclude them. We shouldn't compartmentalize these kind of things. There's always overlap. And we should embrace the overlap, because out of the overlap comes something new. Think of what do they call it? A Venn diagram, the thing with the circles. The 2 circles intersect, and the center part is the important stuff that is in common for the 2. Well, quilts in one circle, books in the other. I should have done that. I just thought of it. Too late now. Anyways, yeah. So thank you, Marjorie, for sending me this idea that at first I poo-pooed. And now you can see where I run with that. And if you would like us to take your idea and run with it, then you need to send it to us. Please put it in the comments below, or better yet, send it directly to me as an email. My email's in the show notes. Read the first little description at the top, shows you how to get to my email address, and send it to us. And we'll run with it. We'll see what we can come up with, what we can find. This is what So Chatty has become right now. I don't know if you like us going this way. We've become sort of philosophical, more with things. We've gone a little bit beyond just simple quilting. We're talking about quilting and its relationship in the world, because it's tied into the world. It's not a separate thing. It is part of. So keep those ideas coming. So any parting words? Are you going to immediately get out novels and read them for ideas to make your shirts? And you could do it with shirts. Yeah. Ooh, that would be good. Yeah. You could make a shirt that's all in red and white and call it the Handmaid's Tale.
Or Santa Claus.
Well, that too. Whatever. Well, at least you're thinking. Okay. So any parting words?
No, not really. Actually, I think the sewing or making quilts and things like that could be more creative if you really thought about it, rather than just following a pattern.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and that's what art quilters do.
Yeah, that's what art quilters do. But I mean, even if you're more rigid into doing a pattern, you could maybe be a little bit more creative in what fabrics you pick and colors you pick, or like we were saying earlier about books. Some of books have odd color combinations on their covers and things like that, and maybe if you sort of use that to inspire you to make use different colors in your quilts and things like that, I think that would be good too.
Yeah. So there's something we didn't really touch on. We talked more about how quilting can lead to more literary education, but literary education, i.e. just reading, could lead to more creative quilting. It goes back and forth between the two, as Walter said. Color combinations you may not have thought of.
Cats reading books.
Well, there you go. Yet you've already done it. You're ahead of your time. You really are. Okay, so that's it for us today. I don't know what we're talking about next week. It depends on you. So send those ideas to us so we have something to work with, and we'll explore it further. So have a good what's left of the week. This is Friday at the time of recording this, so have a good weekend, and we'll talk to everybody next week again. Bye for now.
Bye for now.